Excellent. Well, thanks all for attending our chit chat about bug stuff number 2. For those who haven't been, the first session and or English is the second or perhaps even fifth language, chit chat is a term for a casual conversation. We know there are people from all around the world joining this session today. So yeah, we just want to say that while the dictionary meaning suggests that the content of a chit chat isn't very important, we hopefully provide more stimulation and interest than ordinary gossip. Now, a few housekeeping items. We leave the chat open for Q&A session that we will go through at the end. And we ask attendees to keep the camera and mic off, and then we will share the recording after. Can you see my screen? Because I see a black...
Yep.
Yes, okay, cool. I'll jump into presentations. In the room, we have Janine Malcolm, co-founder of Mobius Farms. With her husband, Chris, they farm black solderfly larvae in the beautiful Barossa Valley in South Australia. And now for many years, they have been operating and they do an amazing job at community building. So it's really lovely people to have around. I am Sofia Katzin, founder and managing director of Fly Mama, a global consultancy specializing in BSF nutrition, biology, and process optimization. I am really in love with these species and love to share my expertise from food science to BSF farming from all across the world. Our first guest is Dr. Nicky Sluczanowski, lead vet and head of product development at PetGood. I'm not going to lie, I've been practicing and pronouncing your surname at least 10 times. Hopefully I got it right.
Very well.
Nicky is a small animal veterinarian with 15 plus years of clinical practice in Australia and global collaboration footprint. She has worked with research teams in Europe on digestibility, health outcomes, and ingredient functionality. Nick has published on black solderfly lipids, including lauric acid antimicrobial properties, and partners with world-class producers to translate science into safe, consistent nutrition. Lucky you, Nicky, that you have experience with products. A little bit of jealousy from here.
Yeah.
So thanks, Nicky, for giving us a piece of your day. And I'd like to kick off the conversation and ask you what first convinced you that insects could work on pet food.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Janine and Sophia today. Really excited to be speaking to this audience. I think for me, coming from the veterinary health perspective, it was always going to be about what nutrition could actually be provided by this feed ingredient or this feed species. And so certainly for myself, when I started looking into using insects, and in particular BSFL in pet food, and was reading some of the research coming out of Dutch universities in particular, looking at the amino acid profiles and also digestibility of a very high quality BSFL meal. That was what won me over, really, when I could see the data that was comparing this particular ingredient, so to speak, to other traditional pet food proteins, and seeing really comparable results in terms of that comprehensive amino acid profile and digestibility in target species, pet animal species. So yeah, for me, it's all about the nutrition, and also on further reading and research as well, understanding a little bit more about some of the functional benefits that can be provided by BSFL. Yeah,
Fantastic, and you brought PetGood into Australia.
Yes, that's right. Yes, I am the lead vet for the global company, and we are certainly a Swedish owned and operated company, and primarily retailing within Europe. And we have had a soft launch, so to speak, of a product here in Australia as well. But at the moment, our biggest activity is in Europe.
Fantastic. Okay, so now next up is Shaun Eislers, founders of Buggy. Shaun came into insect from banking and innovation world, including a significant time in Westpac innovation team. and previously founded an online pet marketplace, which gave him a front row seat to what pet parents actually buy. Shaun is a true visionary, and since 2018, he has been building Buggy, navigating the realities of education, manufacturing choices in Australia versus overseas, and the unit economics of new categories, as well as also served as board and treasurer roles within the Insect Protein Association of Australia. A pleasure to have you with us today, Shaun. And how did you discover that insects could work in pet food back in the days?
Hey, Sophia, and hey, everyone else. Thanks for joining. Look, for me, similar to what Nicky was saying, primarily it was desktop research looking into the nutritional profiles of all insects that were available. And available at the time, I think it was BSF and crickets, primarily here in Australia. But then there was also an overlay, and I think this overlay was the most important part for me, was looking at alternative ways in which we could nourish our pets. So, the food baskets, it's got pressures, it's got global pressures, it continues to have global pressures. And I think looking at that and thinking, okay, well, if we're going to nourish our pets and we're going to do it the right way, what are other options that are there for pet owners and their dogs in particular to consume? And insects seem to be the option at the time. And continues to be, because Buggy is still here. However, for me, that was actually the catalyst. The nutritional profile and all the other bits and pieces, was downstream research that we did complete, and obviously we, did in-market trials and things like that. But really, it was that initial aha moment, I guess, when we went, okay, there's something that we can do and something we can do positively. And by the way, there's all these really great benefits nutritionally, et cetera, that come off the back of it.
Fantastic. Great story. And now rounding us out, it's Peter Banfield, Chief Marketing Officer at Tomcat Global Solutions, previously leading Business Development Department at Viridian Renewable Technology in Victoria. Peter works at the intersection of sustainability, packaging innovation, and commercial go-to-market, helping turn new protein ideas into circular solutions and products that win shopper trust and retailer support across Asia Pacific, Europe, and the US. I imagine the time zones are not the best part of those kind of global roles. And I wrote here on the screen, marketing strategist consultant, but I think a better name would have been marketing consultant. What do you think, Peter? Tell us what made you get into the insect industry. You're on mute, Peter, so yeah, we want to hear you.
Here I am. I worked in the proteins industry most of my life. I worked in the soy market, opening that up, and I authored a book on global go-to-market systems, which I sold to DuPont, which was written for people where English was their second language. It was on a Harvard standard and online learning. So that's got my interest in proteins. But people hire me to get the order and sustain the order and keep the business, because it doesn't matter how interesting we find it and how emotional we are, we have to pay the bill. So it tends to drop in my lap. And I worked with some pretty brutal billionaires in my lifetime and survived. But what interested me in this industry was that, believe it or not, it was dogs running around the back door jumping at flies. My dog used to do it, and they used to love it, and they'd lick their lips, and the same with cicadas in the backyard. So when you connect that with the sustainability component, this really has to work. It just, to me, it makes sense more than anything I've ever seen when you talk about the nutrition, the palatability, and the digestibility of insects. You look at, for instance, the food surplus. I don't call it waste, to surplus, converting it to something useful. You look at aquaculture. All these things are pointing to it, that it makes sense. You just got to make the metrics work. That's what I find very interesting, because you've got all the inbound components where if somebody finds out, for instance, that bread surplus is valuable, they're going to charge you for it. So how do you manage all that? It's an indoor agribusiness, and then you've got the complexity of downstream markets and the products you need to pick. So to me, that's the interesting part. But the reason I'm sitting here tonight, because I have part of me, this has to work. We have to get this right. There's been billions of dollars thrown at it, and it will sort itself out. But it's not alone. The plant-based proteins in the similar, the cell-based meats, or they call it cultivated now, but it's all in a similar boat. And this has to work. It's not negotiable.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's everything in a context. We are not looking at insect protein as a standalone protein with a kind of a global crisis. It's all the proteins together.
We've got environmental challenge, right? And we need to make something good out of it.
That's it. You said it. So today, yeah, all our speakers today, as you saw, have a very unique and really diverse backgrounds, which make them really interested to talk to. So great journey, guys. I like how you managed to find your space in this industry. So now let's get into some of the questions. And first, I start with you, Nicky. So you brought a European idea into Australia. Were there any differences in the product market, and also how the regulation affected your product at the time of launch?
Yeah, look, in a word, yes. Yeah, and to expand, enormous differences really between the market for insect-based pet foods in Europe compared to what's happening, or what was happening when we launched here, and what is and the current status as well in Australia. And I think, to put things into context for the audience, insect-based ingredients were officially recognised as being able to be fed to companion animals in 2016 in Europe. So that was the European Food Safety Authority legislated that a certain group of species of edible insects could be used as a feed inclusion for pet feed. That's a long time ago, really. So Europe has had quite a head start in terms of developing not only the manufacturing side of bringing this ingredient to pet food companies such as ourselves, but also developing the market as well, and starting to educate the pet parent market, so to speak, on all things insect-based pet food. So some big differences there in terms of where the manufacturing capabilities are at, or were at, where the industry was at, where the confidence of pet food manufacturers working with this ingredient was at as well. And then that end point of the chain being the market, where pet parents were at in terms of understanding the nutrition, having trust and faith in these types of ingredients for their pets. So yeah, in terms of when we did have our launch in Australia, it was certainly not without challenges, and I think the challenges ranged from being able to source the volume we needed of a BSFL ingredient here, being able to source the volume at the desired quality as well. Finding a pet food manufacturer who had heard of BSFL, who was happy to work with BSFL, and then actually getting that product out to market as well, and all of the marketing that goes with that. So yeah, some really vast differences that we've found as a company between the European and the Australian space.
Absolutely, yes. And related to that question, really, we're going to now cross-check with a little bit more about markets beyond borders. So, Shaun, you recently pivoted partially from manufacturing in Australia to overseas. What are some of the key lessons from producing locally versus producing in Australia, and what can we learn from that?
It's a really interesting question, because everyone, I think, well, at least locally here, wants to support Australia. And there's a lot of value in brand Australia. Overseas, particularly, they look at the little green and gold kangaroo on the corner of the packaging. And with that comes trust, primarily, legitimacy, and an understanding that there's good quality ingredients or inputs in those products. The challenge for Australia is, manufacturing sense, particularly in the pet food sector, and this is something I only found out once I actually got into the space, was there's limited capacity. And so onshore, you've got either your major brands with their own manufacturing operations, and then you've got the independents who service, smaller brands or bespoke brands or large supermarkets, etc. And they've got limited capacity, right? They've only got 24 hours in a day. The machine can only run for X number of, days. They've got the limitations within which they need to work. And so when you're a new brand and a small brand, and let's face it, a brand which comes with a baggage in the sense that it needs to educate the market on, the benefits of these new ingredients, which, to what Nicky was saying, they've got no idea about. That's challenging. And we knocked on the door, I think, of about 8 manufacturers and got knocked back. We progressed initially with 3. 2 of those fell over for, various reasons out of our control. And the one that we did land on has been great, right? But it took a long time. When we were dabbling with kibble as an example, for me to get a prototype on my desk, it took 2.5 years. And that's because the manufacturers just didn't know what to do with this. They didn't know what it meant for the other customers in the production line, because they go, you're going to put insects in, and now I've got to tell my other customers that they've got to may contain traces of insects on the pack. Things like that, which they didn't have good manufacturing practices in place to take care of it, the HACCP controls and things like that. It just was a really challenging time because the governance around it wasn't there, and even the definition of an insect was still grey. So Australia has been really challenging in that sense, and it's come a long way, but at the same time, manufacturers still have that capacity issue. When you go overseas, and Asia is where we do part of our manufacturing now. For context, I went to Pet Fair Asia in October. I had a prototype product on my desk in Sydney within 3 months. It was there basically when I got home. They're hungry for business. They've got excellent manufacturing capabilities. And the compromise is that, well, A, if you bring a product into Australia, you need import licensing, obviously, but B, you don't get that brand Australia moment when you're sending product offshore or even locally. So, when you think about it, the cost to produce here is quite expensive. The cost to produce in Asia, as an example, it's cheaper. It's not super cheap, but it is cheaper. But it is also a gateway into markets, right, in Asia, as an example, which have a much higher propensity to purchase these kinds of products than necessarily Australians do. Whilst we are innovative in our mindset, we're not necessarily very good at the execution part. And so that's the tension in this space, where you really want to support local, but speed gets compromised, cost gets compromised. And then you've also got a consumer base, which takes a lot of education. So for us, diversifying our manufacturing base made a lot of sense, because everyone has their domain specificity. And just because we've got a treats manufacturer here doesn't mean we've also got a dental bar manufacturer. That doesn't mean they can do everything, right? Everyone has as I said, their specific domains within which they work. And so for us, it just made sense. If we wanted a reliable supply chain and we wanted to service overseas markets, then having that manufacturing base closer to those nations or those regions was a sensible, and frankly, if we didn't, our business probably wouldn't survive.
That's it. Despite the challenges, I like how you reinvent yourself to be able to address those markets and keep expanding your operations in a sense. So,
well, and the other thing I just mentioned, Sophia, sorry to jump in, is that you don't know what's going to work either, right? Like, you can test stuff in market, But because it's such a nascent space still, and like, you know, find there's products on shelves and people know more about it, even if you produce a treats product or even if you produce a kibble, you don't actually know if that's going to stick. So there's a lot of time and effort to actually get it all up and running. But then once you're there, you're like, okay, well, the feedback was positive, the market testing was positive, but it doesn't mean you're not guaranteed sales. So the customer is like the number one thing, and nailing that customer need, you know, is really important, obviously, for your business to thrive. And just because you've got your supply chain and manufacturing sorted out doesn't actually mean that you're going to make the sales at the end.
That's it. Yeah, there is many pieces of the puzzle that have to line up. And that's why we have really experienced people kind of finding solutions to these problems, which is Peter. So I'm sure you can add up a lot to this part of the conversation, Peter, and because we know that you can see the gap in the market and how we not fail at all, but just didn't do the best thing at commercializing.
Yeah, there are a lot of elephants in the room, and just what Shaun said, just to reinforce what Shaun said with the problems in Australia and the costs. Like, we're moving our site to Thailand because the advantages there, and you're in a much bigger market that moves a lot faster. And just to put it in perspective, as far as volumes, I worked on a project for the packaging for a very successful product in the US called Meow Mix. And it was made by Thai Union Manufacturing, or Thai Union Foods. And it was about 600 million units through 5 SKUs. You know, that's some serious volume. So to Visi built the factory out there to supply it, as with the fruit industry. And you know, the numbers were there. It was economic. You could amortize your tooling costs. You could justify resourcing it and the people. But we had to get the order before we got the capital. So that was really a challenge, but we did. And it, since as part of the Thai packaging industry. But the challenges with packaging is to, again, it comes down to making the numbers work. If you're going to put a Tetra recard in, you're up for 12 million euros. Okay, that's a lot of money. There's one just gone in Melbourne recently. If you're going to put in a retort line, the cost, it's 500,000 euros for tooling costs for just to make the packaging. That's the problem you've got. Where in Asia, they've already got those markets, and you just have to do an insert or tweak it or whatever, and you can have something your own. In the pouch market, there's been some advances. One in Melbourne who are doing a retorted pouch, which is sold online. But I think the insect proteins are minor SKU. Again, it comes back to what Nicky said. It's about the education. So there's a lot of marketing to be done, and it's really poorly resourced, as everybody's focusing on growing maggots. You know, basically the insects. If you look at talked to someone a while back. I said, "What's your marketing budget?" "We don't have one." I said, "But you're just going to build a $6 million factory." "Yeah, but they will come."
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say.
Build it and they will come. It's a bit like that Field of Dreams. Build it and they will come. But when I worked for Visi, Richard Pratt was a pretty tough character, and he made you get the order first. And then he would resource you. So you had your whole job and reputation on the line. You were totally accountable. And that's sort of people that bred in Visi, you know. So the industry needs some more people. But unfortunately, because of the nature of marketing these days, most people know how to fix the problem, would be smart enough not to take it on. So we've got to attract those people. And a lot of people are quite risk adverse in marketing. So because they understand the numbers, they're not going to jump into something that's kind of has a big ick factor, because working at an insect factory isn't the most pleasant experience.
No, there is no aesthetic pictures that you can take in a factory, I tell you.
But the thing is, what I like about it, again, what I said in the opening, is that there are so many drivers to make this work. It's just getting the numbers right, and that's the challenge. And getting people. And it's not just a challenge; it's a big challenge. But you know, it's there. That's the elephant in the room.
Peter, I'd just jump in, and
Eislers.
I'd say an elephant that often doesn't get spoken about as well is just purely customers. And I
Yeah,
think you flagged it earlier. Everyone goes in with a lot of you can call it field of dreams, and
passion.
stars in their eyes, and they think, oh, okay, great, this is going to be the future of food or whatnot, whatever the angle is. But you go, well, who are you selling it to? Who's buying it?
Yeah,
And what are they paying? And how many of them are there?
and you
and
look, and
you
you,
can count it on one hand, where you go, well, hold on, like we've been at this for almost 10 years, right, nearly, and it's tough.
when
And to your point around marketing, absolutely. And it depends on where you're marketing, obviously, within the value chain. And we're at the coalface, as Nicky would be, with brands and creating consumer awareness. But there's all along that chain, there's opportunity to market, right? And spruik the benefits, be it at the farm gate, be it through the manufacturing process, or be it, the brands that are sitting there who are pushing the product. But for me, fundamentally, we've got a marketing problem, which ultimately is a customer problem, because they just don't know. They don't know about us. They don't know enough about us, and they don't see enough of us.
if you launch a product into, say, one of the major supermarkets in Australia, five SKUs, with your below the line marketing, your listing fees, and your support, you can burn $700,000 to $1 million really quickly. It can disappear. So it's not cheap. And then you can be gone 3 months later if you're not performing.
Yeah, that's the tough part. You can get cut like
Cut
that.
so
Absolutely.
brutal.
So what, Nicky, Shaun, or even Peter, so what proof points or narratives actually perceived bias? Because I know that you tried many different ways to get that. So what would you say that worked and what didn't?
Yeah, I can jump in first. I think, and you're obviously talking end customer here, Sophia. Is that what
Yes.
you're? Yeah, yeah. And I think given that PetGood, we are retailing pet nutrition products for, and I used this term earlier, and I'll use it again to pet parents. So pet owners are becoming increasingly invested in their companion animal and all aspects of that companion animal's life, which is wonderful for me as a veterinarian to see this, the way this human animal bond is developing throughout the years. But when it comes to nutrition, pet parents are increasingly discerning about what they are putting in their pet's bowl. So a huge part really of this persuasion is being able to prove to the pet parents, to our customers, primarily or essentially first, the health and safety of our products, and the flagship ingredient being the insect protein, but also the health benefits as well. So that's where a huge part of my role in PetGood has come in, is being that middle communication point between customers and our research partners and our insect farm partner, as you mentioned, Sophia, is Protix, and our manufacturing partners as well. So we, or myself, we work closely with veterinary partner groups in Europe, with retail groups, with distributors, obviously one-on-one with customer dialogues as well, to be continually educating our customer base about the safety, the appropriateness, and the health benefits of insects, of BSFL ingredients for pets.
Okay, so very, very highly focused on health and safety of the product.
Yeah. And it's interesting because the company, PetGood, did initially launch with, I guess, probably a 50-50 focus on sustainability and pet nutrition. But we really quickly learnt that, to be successful with our brand, it is about the pet's health first, and sustainability of these particular insect ingredients is a bonus.
That's
Yeah,
it.
I'd second
Quite
that
a
one.
given.
Absolutely second that. We had our hierarchy of needs when we went to market, and we thought, oh well, sustainability is really strong, environmental proposition is really strong, and we had all the nutritional stuff as well. So we kind of had them on par to start with. Very quickly, it's exactly the same thing, Nicky. We went, people don't pay for that. People like the idea of that, but people don't put their hands in their pocket to pay for that. And particularly when you're probably operating in a mid to upper kind of premium spot from a price point perspective. When you tell someone, hey, this is great for the environment, and they're like, does it nourish my dog?
Absolutely.
What are they going to pay for? And ultimately it's the nutrition, right? That's why they're buying a food product.
Absolutely.
So
yeah.
environment actually got our iconography, and our whole packaging got driven by that as well. And environment's mentioned, but at the same time, it's not put front and center. And we found that through social media as well. Running ads in different tests, going environment first as an example. We got a lot of really negative commentary, in fact, from people who were really strong environmental advocates, or they had, there's a lot of opinion in that space.
Mm-hmm.
And, we weren't making audacious claims, but it was really polarizing. The nutritional angle, it cuts through, and it for me anyway, it makes complete sense.
Yeah, and I think the types of customers that are looking into these somewhat alternative pet nutrition products for their pets are often particularly discerning customers as well, and very sensitive to any potential greenwashing. So yeah, look, we've found some similar factors there, Shaun, as well.
Yeah.
Peter, do you see the same adoption patterns at other alternative proteins?
I'm sorry, I missed that.
Peter, do you see the same adoption patterns as other alternative proteins?
Other alternative options with other alternative proteins?
Yeah, so kind of like plant-based products.
Yeah, the plant-based thing. Look, I'm not too sure. Look, I'm a pet grandparent of a Finnish Lapphund, and she's gorgeous, and I walk her 4 or 5 times a week because family are too busy, and so I'm fanatical about the nutrition, the diet, and I have to pick up the mess. And so she's changed something, and it's not that good. It requires a bucket of sand. I'm not, I know she's had a change, so I'm very sensitive to it, and you become more so. And I really love that dog, you can imagine. Anyway, but it's an interesting market. Look, doing the hybrid products. There's a company in Sydney just got some funding. They're doing some plant-based and meat-based hybrids. But this technology's been around for years. It's easy science. You just need a good formulating person who understands, say, Wolf King technology as far as processing. It's not a hard thing to do. The hardest part, again, coming back to that side, is the consistency, because you've got to have a very consistent input. You can't change your formulations all the time. So, but look, there is potential for it. But the company that we was going to mention, Shaun, it was always one at Cial or Anuga in Europe in the big food fairs. They were the very successful organic and vegan company, and they do their soft launch like Nicky's done here, and they would not have that on the label for the soft launch till they were confident the product stood on its own. And then once I was satisfied that it stood on its own merits, right, as for eating quality and all that sort of thing, and pricing and distribution, then they brought the adjectives.
Mm-hmm.
So again, they call it crack testing. So that's how they did it. But it came down to what consumers want. If they don't like it, they're not going to buy it again, and that's a nightmare. So,
yes. So this is a little bit related to what we were talking before. It's how much product do you need for an initial launch, and coupled with the large minimum quantity orders and the shelf life of the product, and choosing the right batch size. So what really, and this is to any of you three, what do you think that worked to avoid that overstocking and also sensible spending?
Overstocking is a real problem, but also so is understocking, because you don't want to run short, because supermarkets hate that more. The thing you've got to be careful of is you got your pipeline fill, then you get your trial, and then you'll get your restocking, and everybody looks at their numbers and they go, oh, we're off and running. But it's just a restocking number. And so you've got to, that's where you get into the danger territory. How much do you start manufacturing? Unless something's retorted or whatever. And with the limited supply, if it's, say, fresh larvae or fresh larvae mince, you can't just switch it on and switch it off. It's not like going out and killing some more cows and whatever. You just can't. So you've got to manage that velocity and those numbers very, very carefully. And that's why some people have gone to online or smaller setup, say independents, to start to understand where it all sits. So you've got to do like a soft launch.
Yeah, I mean, we're sitting at the other end of the spectrum, I guess, because we are one of those, I'll call us a micro brand, right? And in the sense that we get dictated to what MOQs are, because we don't have that kind of scale to dictate and dictate terms. So for us, we went into the treat market initially because of MOQs and because of upfront capital and because of the discretionary spend element to it. We weren't convincing the consumer to buy a bag of kibble. They were like, well, it's a bag of treats, guys. Like, you're much more likely to get them to test it out than otherwise. But when you speak of MOQs, Sophia, if you're a new brand entering the market, they'll tell you what your MOQ is, and it will be at treats around 500 kilos minimum. Kibble, it'll be, if they're being nice, 5 ton, but usually 10 ton, right? And so if you're willing to take a punt on that, great. But at the same time, you've also got to be aware that the product you're creating, you want something with a bit of shelf life to start with, because it's not going to turn that quickly. And so if you're going into like the fresh market, which I know some people have tried, you're destined to fail at this point in the dance, because there just isn't enough cut through. So, whilst some people shy away from, kibbles and things like that, when they're feeding their animals, the reality for us in this space, to get the volume and quantity through and to get a product that sits on the shelf with enough time to convince people to buy that product and then, come back, and to also convince distributors, etc., it's a necessary evil almost.
But even if you're an insect company and you've got $5 million worth of stainless steel you just put in there and robotics and whatever, and you launch a product on this, you're thinking going to make a difference in the insect protein pet food market. So if you've got a big seller would be 10 million units at let's say at 200 grams, and say it's insects about 40% of the formulation, that's about a half a ton a day, if that. So if you're running an insect factory and half a ton a day, maybe less. Or they might want that half a ton a day. They might want it all in the first month, or every third month. And being insects the way they are, how do you manage that velocity? It's really a challenge, and that's the marketing department in the insect protein producer that's got to manage all those balls in the air to make it work. And then if you have something happening in plant because it is an agribusiness, well, the supermarkets are going to be very unforgiving.
Yeah, Shaun and Peter have both spoken really well about the sort of volume practical hurdles there in Australia, and I think to add to that, again speaking strictly in the Australian market here, another area that really needs to be looked at quite seriously is the quality, the QA/QC process of the insect meals that are being produced, because one of the factors, or one of the barriers to market that we found here in Australia was just having the right accreditations attached to insect meal to get it even theoretically on paper in the door of a contract pet food manufacturer. If you don't have externally audited HACCP and or feed safe, you can't get your product into these pet food manufacturing plants, and with good reason. And so this is something that I see as a challenge here in Australia, because those levels of accreditation aren't necessarily commonplace.
And then you've got the argument on post-consumer waste as opposed to pre-consumer surplus.
Yes.
Post-consumer, you've got a whole Pandora's box there.
You do.
So if people gone down that track, it's still an unknown area, the long term.
It's a very unknown area, and yes, you're quite right, Peter. And in Europe, as I mentioned in 2016, when these types of feed species were legislated to be able to be used in pet food. Part of that deal was very much in regards to the feed substrates and defining the feed substrates for the larvae, and that is pre-consumer plant.
Yep.
Full stop. No ifs or buts. And so obviously a different space here in Australia in regards to what can be fed or what is being fed. And I think I see that coming purely from the insect-based pet food nutrition space as another challenge here, because there is a variety of feed substrates, and so that I have certainly seen firsthand has created some confusion for the market as to what is actually even in this protein that I'm then being asked to feed to my dog. What particular residues could there be? What contaminants, etc. And a very interesting topic.
Yes.
We can debate, I think, for many hours on this topic. So thanks again to our great presenters. I think that's now enough from my end. Now we have some time for Q&A. So let's see what comes up in the chat. Jenny, let's see. Okay, so I will start with a question from Katie. She says, a question for you, Peter, regarding the sustainability and packaging side. For freshness, I still see plastic packaging is the main solution, even in insect protein pet foods. What solutions have you explored to remove plastic completely?
Well, you do in rigid plastics. You do biaxial extrusion. You do maybe you might do a recovered product on the outside and virgin on the inside. They've reduced the level of EVOH now under a certain point, so that packaging can be recycled. But the thing is, the infrastructure to recycle is not in place. So it can be recycled, but whether it is or not. So the sustainability thing is, I'm on a board in the US in sustainability, and that's the big challenge that we find. Then that's why there's just not the infrastructure to do it. But if you look environmentally for it, for instance, if you look at something, for instance, that's manufactured in Thailand, it's retorted, then they've got to put it in refrigeration for 12 days because of retort shock, because it opens up, it's got to settle down, then go in a reefer to the US market. If you get a lot of failures, that means the ingredients are 90% of the carbon footprint. So you want to make sure the packaging works, because environmentally, from a carbon foot, it's effective. Because with good packaging, you don't need to refrigerate it for retort shock. You don't need to put it in a reefer, and you don't get failures, and you get long shelf life. So that's highly effective environmentally. So there's a lot of greenwashing going on, but unfortunately, like the rigid plastics are on the nose, and people are avoiding them because of the job that's been done. But yeah, and then you've got the pouches, and then you've got the retortable cartons. So they've all got their issues. There's no real way around it. I think you've just got to, but you can go back to canning maybe, but consumers aren't that fussed about it. But that's in the shelf stable. But or then just go for a dry product.
Thanks, Peter. Now, Nicky, for you, in Sweden, some old school customers still believe eating insect is illegal for human consumption and entirely unhealthy, so they translate that into pet food as well. What specific tests are you working on that prove long-term safety and improvements compared to other proteins?
Yes, thanks for that question. Look, we certainly, there's even in Europe, where these ingredients have been produced or manufactured at scale for some time, we still get plenty of questions and concerns from our European market about the safety of this of BSFL as an ingredient. And I think I'm very fortunate that we have as our insect partner Protix, because I certainly am able to access a lot of very reassuring data from our insect partner for questions such as this. I mean, the thing to remember with insect farming is this is one of the most controlled ways to produce a feed or food ingredient that you could think of. Anything that goes into that insect factory, so to speak, and everything that comes out is tested to the nth degree in terms of residues of anything you could be concerned about. And so we often have specific questions from customers. The latest one was concerns about PFAS residues. Could there be PFAS residues in the insect meal because there'd been something in the media about PFAS getting into eggs? And these are compounds that are screened for and tested, and so that confidence is able to be passed on to the consumer. So there is a huge amount of QA and QC work that's being done at the insect level in terms of where the insect protein comes from. And likewise, the manufacturing partners that we work with are leading European pet food manufacturers who are doing their own sets of very regular, very stringent QA, QC protocols and procedures. So again, from a food hygiene and safety or feed hygiene and safety perspective, we're able to provide great comfort to our customers whenever these questions come up.
Yeah, it's a bit like infant formula, isn't it?
What's that, Peter? Sorry?
It's a bit like infant formula. When I was working in the US, like for instance, they had one product that had a lot of liver in it, and you had a problem going green with a bit of oxidation, and they said, no, kill it.
Right.
Unless we can fix it, kill that SKU, because one cat dies, our business has dropped from $300 million valuation down to about a $200 million valuation. So they're fanatical about, looking at that safety part of it.
Absolutely.
That's it. That's very right. Now, Shaun, to you, I ask you a question. If I gave you, let's say, 10, 20,000, not like millions yet, because I don't have the millions, where would you spend it? On consumers, retailers, or manufacturers in terms of education, really? Like, how would you spend it in education?
I 100% go into consumer marketing. Absolutely. Like, that's where the majority of the spend should be and needs to be. I mean, Peter flagged it earlier. At the moment, we've got an information asymmetry. Like, there's a knowledge gap there. And without marketing, and good quality marketing too, mind you, like, anyone can put out something, but something which is good and has cut through and is nailing the key messaging of whatever, the brand's trying to achieve, is 100% where I'd put that money. And I think sometimes we get too cute with marketing as well, in terms of the verbiage or the terminology that we use, and we try to get a little bit, it gets a little pompous almost. So I think also the messaging and the cut through, to achieve, the cut through, it needs to be simple, and it nourishes your dog. Not it's hypoallergenic and has a fantastic amino acid profile. Like, consumers just switch off, right? They're like, I'm looking for something to nourish my dog. Key message, this product fulfills that customer need, and market to that customer base. And so for us here, that's something we've learned over time. We were silly in the beginning, but really aligning that with the target market audience is key. Sorry, Peter.
Yeah.
There's a video floating around, Shaun, of when I was at Veridian, the owner, the CEO's dog was sort of days off living and wouldn't touch anything. But as soon as it put its snout in a bowl of insect protein food, it ate them. And just a simple look, and that video is floating around. It's a beautiful video, this lovely old Labrador, and eating these insects, this retorted product that was made. And that's a simple message, you know.
And I think
Love
that's
family,
really
pet,
important.
last meal.
Yeah, and look, it's a little bit morbid, but
it was touching. The video is very touching.
It's touching, and I think that's exactly, it's a connectivity, and it's a connectivity into that core customer need, and that emotive content is obviously gets you over the line. But I think that's been missed, and I think it continues to be missed. And for new businesses coming out, be they insect growers, be they, you know, new brands going direct to consumer, whatever it may be, customer is number one. And if you don't have them, you don't have a business, you've got a hobby. So it's really, really important that anyone coming into this world understands that and has not only done their research, but you know, understood what need they're fulfilling, and then, you know, how they're successfully going to get in front of those humans.
Absolutely. And now I have a question for all. Why do you think insect producers are finding it hard to consider the marketing and product manufacturing aspects?
Who's going to answer?
I can speak.
Ask the question again, Sophia, just so
again.
Yes, I'll give you some time, and I can start answering because I could say I'm an insect producer, even though I'm a consultant. I have produced in the past. So it says, why do you think insect producers are finding it hard to consider the marketing and product manufacturing aspect? Like from the insect part, I guess, I mean, we underestimated how much we had to put on that part. Like, as you said, Peter, we thought that, we just offer the product and the demand will follow. They will take it from our hands. And really, that didn't happen because there is a commercial reality. It's not just how fantastic, technically beautiful, like the amino acid profile. It's also the price, the volumes, the quality, and more than anything, the consistency that we can provide that. So we were too busy on the production side. That's my take from really producing insects, I guess, and always with limited budget. Does anyone want to add?
Yeah, I guess something that I found in our journey, in PetGood's journey here, you know, attempting to get the brand launched here, was that there just didn't, at that time, didn't seem to have been a lot, or if any, communication between the BSFL producers and then the manufacturing middleman point. There just didn't seem to be very much dialogue between those groups at all, and that was a real hindrance, as Shaun mentioned earlier, you know, knocking on multiple groups' doors, and so, you know, I had pet food manufacturers who, when I cold called them, literally thought that they'd be receiving a sack of live maggots, and that's what I was proposing, and huge concerns obviously on their end. So I think I can't speak for really for the agricultural feed space in terms of pig and poultry and aqua, but in terms of pet food manufacturing as an end product here, I think there has just been, from the BSFL producers' point of view, not enough communication to date anyway. To look at how the value chain is to continue.
And I think on the value chain note, primary producer probably assumes, rightly or wrongly, that the end purchaser, the brand, the pet food manufacturer, the pet food brand, is going to be selling widgets consistently, right? They bought it once, they're going to keep buying it because they're pet food. Everyone buys pet food. That's not the reality. The reality is we're working super hard to sell these products and educate customers. And just because you sticky tape together a farm, you don't have a shored up, supply agreement, right? Like you just don't. And so I think if, as a primary producer, if I was to put that hat on, even before digging your first hole to start your production, it's really looking at it and going, okay, what markets are available to me, and how do I diversify my operation in terms of my customer base to make sure that if for some reason Nicky's not buying enough for PetGood, that, hey, Shaun over at Buggy Bix is, or there's another adjacency, be in those other markets that Nicky mentioned around, poultry, pigs, etc., that I can, shore that up and then market appropriately, right, to where you think that your sweet spot is. The primary production isn't marketing. That's the problem. Like, they're assuming people are going to come. Customers just don't turn up. Customers don't even know you exist. You've got to get in front of someone at least 7 times before they, actually decide to press purchase, maybe. So I think that that's a huge problem, and that problem is going to continue to persist, and money's going to get burnt because people go in with, there's stars in their eyes. And I do think as well, as the market matures from a downstream value add perspective, there will be more opportunities for primary producers to diversify. Things like, I don't know, nutraceuticals, cosmetics, other agricultural plays, which aren't necessarily feed plays. That will give them that opportunity, but they can't bank on that, right? That's something that may happen, but relying on, a Buggy Bix or a PetGood or whoever to buy 10 tons a month, it's just not going to happen.
No, absolutely. And hope this is a lesson for the industry and for the years to come. I think now we have the process relatively under control. Let's focus big on our offtake.
Yeah.
And yeah, Peter, please.
I'd just like, back up what Shaun said, you've got to understand what competing's all about. And competing is expensive and complex, because I used to lecture in the thing. My favorite thing was a Michael Porter 5 forces model, which is about rivalry and power of buyers and power of sellers, new entrants and exits, and give you a really good understanding of what you're competing against, and competing against direct and indirect. But also you got to compete within the pet food manufacturer, because, for instance, if you look at PepsiCo New York, they have a whole lot of projects that get put up to New York in Madison Avenue, and there'll be 100, and 5 will get chosen for 2027 launch or 28 launch, and of those 10 that get chosen, there might be only 3 that get through. So you're competing for all these other good ideas as well. So that's your marketing, is not just simply selling a widget. You've got to compete everywhere to make sure, as Shaun was saying, that it's still on the shelf and getting taken off the shelf, and it happens the same next week or next month. That's the hard part. And everything's been pumped into the stainless steel and the factories and the production, without understanding the complexities. And again, all the protein industries in the same boat with all these startups. And there's been, in Australia, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars that just disappeared because they didn't understand competing. And now you've got product that's allowed to come into Australia, which has come in. So that's the new normal. Sorry, it's here, and it's the cat's out of the bag. So you're going to have to compete against that as well now.
Thanks, Peter, and thanks everyone and all the speakers. You've been amazing. I learned a lot through the conversation, and I'm super excited that we made this happen. Now we are, nearly on the hour. So now I know it's late in some parts of Australia and the world. So I'll leave you to have a good night. Here are the contact details in case you want to reach out directly. And Shaun, I have a question for you. Where can we buy Buggy Bix products?
You can buy them at buggybix.com, or you can buy them on Pet Circle. Black Soldier, I'm calling it Black Soldier Fly Day. That's happening as we speak. So Get in quick. We've got 30% off.
Nice.
Get
With the
involved.
code chit chat about big stuff, you get
Yeah,
a
sure.
discount. Excellent.
All
Okay,
right,
well,
guys.
thank you so much, everyone, and we hope to be able to put another chit chat number 3 about bug stuff soon. Stay in touch.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
See you
you.
later.
Thank you.
Bye bye.